President Trump meeting today with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. Netanyahu hoping to persuade the U.S. to end Iran's ballistic missile and proxy support program. Before meeting with the president, Netanyahu met with Secretary of State Marco Rubio after signing on to President Trump's Board of Peace. Let's bring in Robert Greenway, director of the National Defense Center at the Heritage Foundation and former senior director at the National Security Council under President Trump. Robert, great to have you with us this afternoon. So here's what the president said about potential consequences for Iran if talks don't work out. He said, either we will make a deal or we will have to do something very tough like last time. We have an armada that is heading there and another one might be going. The president's suggesting that another American aircraft carrier strike force group might be making its way to the region. It seems to be more than a little bit of gunboat diplomacy here. Is that going to work in your estimation?
Well, thanks for having me, John. Look, if this sounds familiar, it's because it is. This is the same sequence of events that got us to Midnight Hammer in the 12-day war, which resulted in the decimation of Iranian command and control of their air defenses, a chunk of their ballistic missile program, and ultimately their nuclear weapons program. And so as we enter into this round, Iran is even weaker with the significant unrest and vastly deteriorating economy. All of that bodes well for President Trump and for the assets and resources that the United States and Israel can muster against them. They stand largely defenseless and have refused and rebuffed all attempts at negotiations, which means, as you suggest, force may well become likely.
Right. So, you know, Iran, they may be weak, but they talk like they're the biggest dog on the street. But here's what the president said about the possibility of reaching a deal.
Do you think a deal with Iran with this current regime would ever really stick?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I know one thing. They want to make a deal. They wouldn't talk to anybody else, but they're talking to me.
Oh, you know, the book on Iran, it's, you know, they always say that they want to make a deal, they sign on to a deal, and then they never live up to it. So if they're only going to do that again, why even talk to them in the first place?
Well, I think the president has shown remarkable persistence in this line, but his patience has limits. And as he was quick to remind us in the first Trump administration, they never lost a negotiation, but also never won a war. And so I think the Iranians are going to negotiate themselves back out of this deal, and ultimately force will be required. And now their ballistic missile program is the sole focus of that attack, and it's smaller than it was at the beginning. But to your point, I think you're exactly right. I don't expect these negotiations will result in a promising development. I think largely because the Iranians still think they're negotiating with the Biden administration and team appeasement.
So Ali Larijani is the secretary of the Supreme National Security Council in Iran. He is clearly worried about President Trump teaming up with Benjamin Netanyahu. He put this out on X. He said, Netanyahu is now on his way to the United States. Americans must think wisely and not allow him, through posturing, to imply before his flight that I want to go and teach Americans the framework of the nuclear negotiations. They must remain alert to the destructive role of the Zionists. I mean, after Midnight Hammer and what happened during the 12-day war and taking out most, if not the preponderance, of Iranian air defenses, it would seem as though the regime is very worried about President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu and the power of the Israeli Air Force to team up.
Well, they certainly ought to be, but I'm not sure they're sufficiently motivated to conclude. As President Trump has stated, when a deal's on the table, as Maduro can tell you now that he's in custody in the Southern District in New York, you probably ought to take it. I'm not sure the Iranians are paying heed to that, and they may well pay another price for it.
So Nikki Haley, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations and presidential candidate, was on special report with Brett last night. Here's what she said about this moment in time regarding Iran and potential regime change. Listen here.
Iran has never been weaker than they are right now. The one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to send all these resources over there and then still have the Iranian regime standing.
So we've got the link in there now. There may be another carrier strike group on the way. The president is going to array a massive firepower that could potentially be launched against Iran. We saw what happened with Maduro in Venezuela. If the president sends all of this over, then doesn't get a deal, does he have to act in some way?
Well, I think the odds are certainly in favor of it. And again, his red line was the killing of protesters, and that already happened and was crossed. So I suspect failed negotiations will result in a second strike. And again, I think Iran is, in fact, at the weakest point that it's been. And the goal of the first Trump administration, and I think now, is to remove it as an obstacle to peace and stability in the region. And it is closer now than it has ever been.
Right. The big question, though, I guess, is what might come after the Ayatollahs, and would it be better or would it be worse? Robert, good to catch up with you. Thanks so much, sir. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.